welcome back to the channel. You're here for another watch list, my weekly, or used to be weekly, rundown of what I've been watching in the past week. I haven't made one in a while, so I've got a lot of stuff to get through, so let's get right to it. And I'll start with a film that a lot of people talk about, and that is One Cut of the Dead. Third Window Films. People are a bit reluctant to talk about what this is, but I'll try my best. It basically tells the behind the scenes of a filmmaking journey of a zombie flick, and plays it through for you and keeps on going behind the scenes. It just keeps on getting made. It's every bit as good as people say it is. It is unusual. You'll not see too many films like it, but an absolute cracking watch. One Cut of the Dead. Again, not to speak too much about it, but it's behind the scenes look at filmmaking. Let's put it that way. At its very core, but it's very funny. It's very comical. It's well acted, and you can't help but be impressed as it all comes together at the end. And as people say, you've got to get past the first half an hour because it feels like a really cheaply made zombie film. What are you going to do? That's the first one. Second one, BFI release of Denis Villeneuve's Polytechnique. The dramatisation of a real life incident in which a lot of female people were shot in a polytechnic in Montreal, and 1989 was the year that it happened, and this film wasn't made until 2009, sorry, is when it was made. So there was a gap that went into it, and it was the idea basically by one of the actresses in it, Catherine Vanasse, who is in there, who wanted to basically tell the story of these. And there is a very clear question that's asked about whether you should be making films about this kind of material, especially when the families, etc., of the people are all still around. Are they going to be hurt or otherwise by the filmmaking material? And Denis Villeneuve bravely put about trying to write the screenplay and changed the names of all the people that are involved in there. Didn't look to glorify the killer, except the film itself is presented alongside a documentary in here, and the documentary goes into the events around and the impact of around the massacre itself. Now, I don't remember being told about the massacre, so I think the value of films like this to be seen is the fact that it really rams home that these things are important and why this happened. Was this a madman who just went and killed people? Because it was quite unusual for people to target females in this kind of serial killing way. He was anti-feminist, so he blamed a lot of his ills in his life on feminism. And the documentary goes into the fact that you have to listen to this person, why he was frustrated. And a lot of the prominent feminists in Montreal at the time are in the documentary, and they talk about that and about the lessons and the letters that he left for them that we weren't able to see at the time. And I think the two of them together make, both the documentary and the piece of filmmaking, make for an utterly amazing release that is Polytechnique here. It's got a really great booklet in it as well that goes into both the filmmaking of Denis Villeneuve's career, where it fits, what he was doing before and what he was obviously doing afterwards, right up in the modern days. One of them more celebrated directors of today. June's out next year. Who's not excited for June? And I think this is an utterly brilliant release, and very nearly made my top 10 releases of the year because of the disc itself, the fact that you have those two bits put together. Next one is a Eureka release. It is made in Hong Kong. Fruit Chan's 1997 film, which tells the story of, well, a young man, Autumn, who is basically a carrier or a collector for a more powerful group of people. He basically runs around and collects money for them. And it tells the story of his relationship with a girl that he meets and how it changes him. The girl's not well. She has a problem with, well, you'll find that out in the story, but she's a long-term health condition, but he can't help but fall for her. And while some of the scenes are a bit awkward with how sexualized and how young she is, etc., you get a film that is, I think, really interesting. I don't know if I'll love Made in Hong Kong again, but I definitely think it's a film that I could love, because it will sit in your memory as his life around Hong Kong, etc., ruminates in your head. He lives in a very underprivileged bit. He has issues with parents. His mother etc., doesn't seem to know what to do with him. She tries her best for him, but you can see how he ended up making some of the decisions that he had. He's a very nice guy, as it turns out. There is, within their group, is what would be a retarded guy who gets picked on, but Autumn takes him under his wing and makes sure looks out for him, and that's actually forefront in a lot of his decision making. Is we've got to look after him, that's my responsibility. And you know, you can see there's good in him, but he's in a bad situation, he's doing bad things, and it's circumstance and it is places. I think this is really worth a watch, and it's really an enjoyable release, and it's again another release that's indicative of the great job that Eureka did this year, and put together a really good set of releases for themselves. So that was that. Fun City Editions. I finally got these through from Vinegar Syndrome. One of the ones that I wanted to see was Alphabet City. I've showed you the back rather than the front, but it is such a gorgeous slipcover that I think you deserve to see all of it. It's this lovely embossed thing. It is a, I think, pretty good film. I liked Alphabet City quite a lot. It tells the story of, again, a bit similar to Made in Hong Kong, of a character in New York this time, that is basically doing a bit of underground, not so decent work, does a lot of the money collecting for a more prominent gangster or otherwise, including burning down his own tenement building with his mum in it. That's kind of the plan, and to get this insurance money and get a payout. But again, he has some things going on in the background. He has a relationship with a woman and a kid, and you know, does he want to get away from it? Can he escape it? So that kind of, both Fruit in Hong Kong, or sorry, Made in Hong Kong, this, something like City God, people trying to escape that life. Can you escape what is the seedy underground of New York at that time in the 80s? There's lots of neon, there's lots of music, there's lots of clubs, there's lots of themes that are very prevalent and evocative of that time. And Alphabet City was a really interesting watch, and one I'm really glad I watched. I don't know if I'd put it up there with, you know, something you'd want to watch again and again, but it definitely does evoke a time and a place of 80s New York, and that kind of seedy underbelly that a lot of people say in the extras is just an area that nobody went near or talked about in Hong Kong. So Alphabet City, Fun City Editions through Vinegar Syndrome, a really lovely release, and honestly, this might win slipcover of the year. Look at that, that is gorgeous. Next one up, Criterion. One that a lot of people seem to talk about a lot this year, and one I really enjoyed, and it is Girlfriends by Claudia Weil. Girlfriends by Claudia Weil, you can see its roots. If anybody's ever seen any episodes of Girls by Lena Dunham, you can see kind of its roots in here. Claudia Weil subsequently directed a lot of episodes of Girls, so, I mean, heart and sleeve kind of stuff. You can see where it comes from, but it tells the story of Susan here, who's a young photographer who moves into a new apartment with her girlfriend, but platonic girlfriend, and they have big plans for the place as they both set up Burgeoning. Anne wants to be a writer, Susan wants to be a photographer. She photographs the things around her, but shortly after they move in, Anne admits that she's going to get married, and she's moving out and leaving Susan by herself. And it tells a story basically of how Susan adapts to that, how she feels left out, she feels abandoned, how she meets and makes relationships with other females in her life, and how they influence her and help her get over, as well as her own romantic relationships herself. And like, there's nothing incredible about Girlfriends. It is a film that's obviously very low budget from the days, but there's real craft in Girlfriends itself. I mean, some of the extras I think really make a lot of this release, in that they go into the very organic nature of how this screenplay was put together, how they fill the home section about the setting up the relationship between Susan and Anne at the start, and then realised that they didn't need to do that. They only needed this to carry on from a certain point on. And the extras have three interviews with Claudia Weil, Melanie Maron, who plays Susan, and I think is absolutely brilliant in it, just utterly fantastic in it. Appears in two of them. So you get a good idea of the behind the scenes of a film that was made in 1970 something, rather 1974 or something like that. This was made, and it's very much of the time in New York as well, and you can definitely get a feel for New York at that time as well. I thought Girlfriends was really good, really interesting. But I do think it's enhanced by the extras that are on the disc. I think it's enhanced by the essays that are inside, and how it really looks at how friendships work, and that, you know, one thing in a relationship doesn't define a relationship. So if people make a misstep here, it doesn't doom them forever. People come back around if they care for each other, and they will always be there for them, regardless of the stuff they're going through themselves or not. That was Girlfriends. And then I've got two quick ones. I've got two from Indicator. I've got Force 10 from Navarone, one of their lovely hardback releases. This was the sequel to Guns from Navarone, which was Gregory Peck, etc. inside it. That was made, 12, 14, 19 years later. So they couldn't use the same people, or they couldn't use the same setting. In fact, they went to Yugoslavia and they filmed Force 10 from Navarone. Now, Force 10 from Navarone is a film that, again, is not highly thought of all the time on it. I'll show you the bottom of the thing. It is a gorgeous box, there's no doubt about that. Very premium. Not very highly thought of at the time, especially compared to the Guns from Navarone, which I do think is an absolute classic. Gregory Peck, etc. is excellent. But I do also think that this release is equally as good. It's got a very young Harrison Ford in it. It's got Robert Shaw, who plays Gregory Peck's character in it, and does a very different take on it, but still within the same universe. They try and plant a whole load of bombs to blow up a bridge, but all the while some of them have a hitman mission to kill a guy, and they get mixed up with the various factions. It's very Bond-esque, even so much that Richard Kiel is one of the characters in it. It feels very Bond, not surprising since the director was a Bond director. And taken in that light, it's not as serious as Guns from Navarone at all. I can't look at it that way. It's just not shot the same way. It is taken right the way through as being a bit of a farce and a bit of a play for fun kind of movie. And I really enjoyed Force 10 from Navarone. It is an utterly incredible disc, as you'd expect from Indicator. Some great behind the scenes makings of documentary, etc. of when they had to go and film in Jersey, part of the thing. And then when they realised that they couldn't film in Jersey because it was so rainy, welcome to Great Britain, it caused some overruns on the producer, etc. I just thought, brilliant release, and another one you can chalk up to being very solid from Indicator. And last but not least, I'm going to finish with another Indicator, and that's Moscow on the Hudson, which very bravely takes Robin Williams' character, who plays a Russian, going to America. He basically abdicates, or, leaves his Russian homeland. The Russian band that he's in goes to tour in America, and as the thing goes, his friend wants to defect, and it turns out that Robin Williams' character defects, and he then builds relationships at home, while we still think about his relationships that he left back home in Russia, because he never really got to say goodbye to anybody. And I think it's a pretty brave film, because Robin Williams probably shouldn't have been able to do and pull off the Russian part quite as well as he does. They probably should have got a Russian who moved dinging it, but anyway, it works really well. Paul Mazursky film, and the scene where he defects in the film, I think, is just so wonderfully done. It's played for comedy capers at that point, but you'd expect that with Robin Williams, and a really worthwhile watch, and another great Indicator release. Just fantastic. I just love it. It has, the usual. It has those Guardian interviews that they play as commentaries over the back, as a bit, and then we have an auto commentary from Mazursky and stuff as well. I just think Indicator can never release a bad film. That's generally what they always come out with. They're always well worth the money. That's why I continue to pick them up every month. And that's my watch list for the end of last year, start of this year. Whew! We made it. That's the first one kind of for the start of this year. I hopefully will get back to making these kind of regularly if you enjoy them. I don't really have any great plans, like a lot of people have said about plans for 2021. I'm trying to lose a bit of weight. Like, if I've got to be honest, I weighed myself just shortly after Christmas and went, enough. As somebody who used to play sport, filmmaking as a hobby and exercise don't often match, and that's kind of where we are at the moment. So I'm going to try and be a bit more active. So it might mean less movies than I watched last year. I never got to finish the rundowns of each labels this year because I got a bit sick. Nobody wants to hear that, but that is what it is. So I've no real plans. I probably will start talking about music because I've been wanting to do it for a while, but trying to find an avenue in or what I'm talking about is proven to be something that I just can't quite get that push towards doing. But I think I'll probably highlight some artists or records that are special to me, and kind of go from there. I'll probably do a bit of a deep dive in each of those albums, but we'll see how that goes. That might never happen. But thanks very much for watching. I hope you all had a great new year, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Take care. Bye.